Hi, morning. Welcome to P4Di, the podcast for the dissemination of innovation information. Don't worry, I am going to drop that little last bit. I'm just going to refer to it from now on as P4Di. I feel as though I'd have to justify giving it a full naming convention because I blatantly stole the name from C4Di, which is an amazing tech company in Hull, which I'm sure in these podcasts in the coming weeks I'll make reference to. Anyway, on today's show, this is what we've got. We're talking what is the perfect diet and how to lose weight. We're talking about why I think nutrition is undertapped in the NHS and what we can do about it. We're going to look at what the businesses of the future will be and what we need to do to get ready for that. We're going to be talking social media, podcasting, and why we need to be more like Jesus. We're going to be talking about death, dying and suicide and why we need to think differently and a few more things. Actually, I've got quite a long list in this first episode. We might touch on fighting, knife crime and martial arts and how we can ensure our kids are safe in the future and now. And I might even, just if we've got time, talk about public and patient engagement in the NHS, what annoys me about it and how I think we can do something to really improve it. So yeah, thank you for joining me. I hope you're going to enjoy this P4Di podcast. As I say, I'm going to try and share information that I stumble across and people that I stumble across that I think are really worth knowing about or finding more about them. And also, not only that, I'm going to be giving you some free ideas. I mean, look at that. What podcast gives you such a varied amount of topics and gives you free ideas, some of which I guarantee you'll be able to run with and make a real success. Probably what you're going to ask is, how can I tie in such a varied podcasting agenda, going from nutrition, death and dying, social media and Jesus? How are we going to wrap all that up? And that is a very good question. So we're just going to see how it goes. And in the words of MacGruber, if anyone's seen the film MacGruber, there's a big difference between seeing what happens and winging it, and we are just going to see what happens. So bear with me. First podcast on my own. It's just me and you, so we can get connected, we can get deep, I don't want it to be too scripted, because if I script it too much, it won't be authentic, and that's not what I want to do. So take with the rough with the smooth, please. I will cock up in a few places, I'm sure, and stumble over my words. Very difficult talking to a camera on your Todd. So yeah, not the easiest thing. But just before we get into the first, we'll call it an episode. I think I called it a show at the beginning. It's not really a show. It's not even really an episode. But before we get into the first episode, I am putting this on YouTube, so you can subscribe if you want to. Not that there'll be groundbreaking information in this at times, but it is on YouTube, and there'll be some subscribe buttons, I'm sure. But mainly, it's going on some of the podcasting players, and we are going to talk about podcasting in a bit. So you can get it on iTunes or Apple iPodcasts, Android. I have Google Play, Google Podcast. And then there's all the other podcasting platforms like Spotify and Stitcher, which I don't know a lot about, to be honest with you. One of my dogs is wanting to make an appearance, so let's just go and see if she's there. Right, here we go, we're back on. Okay, so let's start with, where should we start? Should we start with social media podcasting and why we need to be more like Jesus? Maybe so. Maybe it kind of fits in with what I've just been describing. I think I listen to a lot of podcasts which are from people that have thousands and thousands of followers. And what I found really interesting with a lot of them is they always talk about social media, about how we should have a break from it and how they don't use it, and and they never go on it. And I think, we have to subscribe to their content, and I guess it kind of winds me up a little bit. That all these people are kind of preaching, that this is how you should use social media, and for your mental health you should get off it. And I wanted to do a slightly different take on it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think, yes, you can be on social media a little bit too much potentially. But actually, if you're not on social media, you may be losing out on educating yourself, on connecting with people, Okay, you're only connecting people at times virtually, but actually that can lead to other future relationships. And I guess it was really just to try and put a different spin on it. When you will see a lot of times people telling you don't be on social media and it's not good for your mental health, and I just think sometimes that adds extra guilt to people who are on it. So I just think get on it. Maybe don't use it for kind of looking at really random things. I think if you're on it to try and educate yourself or to connect with people, then don't feel guilty about it. And then there's also that kind of feeling where they talk about younger kids and trying to get followers and it's all a big game. I want like my page and I want to get 5,000 followers and look, I've got 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, whatever it might be. And I think this is where I kind of thought, at first, it's kind of a bit like Jesus now. I've got a friend who's a vicar, a padre, and he's probably thinking, what territory are you going into with this? And I will keep this light. I'm by no means an expert in Jesus or religion. But if you look at Jesus, he only had 12 disciples. He only needed 12 good people around him. And I probably should know more about this, but obviously one betrayed him. But let's not go down the story of Jesus just in this podcast. But he did surround himself only by 12 people, and yet look at Christianity, how it's massive and how it's spread around the world. And I think I would like to kind of see social media flip a little bit and not be so obsessed with how many followers we got and like my page, because what I sense is happening is everyone now can create content. I can create content. This is content that I'm creating. And then you're back into this world where there is just, there's too much stuff. And the more you try and follow, the less you kind of get a grip on things. So for me, I think I would like to see, personally, I'm not bothered if no one even watched these videos, because I do this for myself. I like to kind of, use it to educate myself and to cement some of my learning and talk back and develop skills about how to do podcasting. So I've got no qualms with that. And also I was thinking the other day, I don't even actually know how many followers I've got on Twitter or even if you have got followers, how you interact with them constantly. It's very difficult. So I think taking a leaf out of kind of the book of other great people, where think less about how many people you've got and more about actually connecting with just a few key individual people. Because if obviously your content can get out to a couple of people and you can help influence someone and they help influence you, that for me is more powerful. Now, that was one connection with Jesus. The other reason why I thought I would throw in the reference to Jesus is because I listened to a brilliant Joe Rogan podcast this week with a guest called Hotep Jesus. Now, he is a marketing I'm going to call him a guru. He's worked for 50 Cent, and Joe Rogan felt strongly enough about him to get him on his show. And obviously, Joe Rogan's in big demand. But I liked the beginning of the podcast. He was talking about different social media platforms, and he did talk about Instagram and how he doesn't use it and doesn't like it. And I must admit, I've been thinking a lot about this recently. I'm on Instagram and I just don't get it. And I was thinking of coming off it, and Hotep Jesus certainly says he doesn't entertain it. He sticks to one platform, and for him that platform's Twitter. And I think Twitter is massively powerful. I think it really does help connect people. So if you're not on Twitter, I think it's a good move. So I was kind of thinking of coming off Instagram. And then I saw a feature last night that I maybe are tapping into enough, and I know Twitter were trying to go down that route because I listened to a podcast with the chief exec of Twitter on it. But Twitter were trying to allow people to connect on subject areas and not necessarily people, because it's very difficult to find people, but you might think, right, I'm actually interested in this subject area. So for example, I really like nutrition, so I might be able to follow the subject of nutrition. And I saw a topic of lifestyle medicine, which I'm really interested in. So again, I can follow the topic of lifestyle medicine, and with it, therefore, I can follow and interact with people that are interested in that subject area. So I saw that on Instagram last night, so it made me wonder whether I'm sort of not tapping into Instagram as much as I can and should do. But I thought it was really interesting what Hotep Jesus said, and it's worth a listen to. He's on the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm going to see if I can get some tips from on Instagram and social media by attending the Creative Point, who are a group of people at P4Di in Hull who are putting on some workshops covering a range of creative topics, one of which is social media. So I'm hoping I can get along to that and improve my knowledge. But I'm sort of mindful that actually Twitter works for me to connect with subject areas, and I may drop some of the others on the head. So that was social media, podcasting, and Jesus. If you're not listening to podcasts, I do recommend getting amongst them. They are really good. You've got basically free content, and it just for me is really worth making sure that you understand how to get onto a podcast player, trying to find podcasts that you're interested to. And are interested in, and listening to them. And I'm going to touch on podcasting in this next kind of bit that I wanted to talk about, which is we'll talk about business is the future, I think. Yeah, business is the future. Again, what I listen to, and remember, this podcast, this isn't about me giving loads of information, because I'm far from an intelligent person. It's just kind of pointing you to things that I'm listening to that I think actually, if you listen to, hopefully you will get influenced like I am, and see some good things. So forgive me if I don't always pass on the exact knowledge of these subject areas. I'm by no means an expert, but I listened to a really good podcast. Again, Joe Rogan has a lot of varied guests on, and he had a gentleman on called, I'm just going to call him Naval, but basically he's an internet tech investor, and he's a really good kind of philosophical person about where the future might go. And it's definitely worth a listen to. And we were talking about the businesses of the future, and I thought it was really interesting. He mentioned about how we would never have thought if we'd have gone back sort of 5 years or so, that people would make money out of YouTube. People could create content, people could watch people watching video games and still make content. And he said, actually, the world will find jobs. The world will change, and the world will create jobs, because a lot of people are maybe kind of, if you follow some of the stuff on robotics and AI, that you're going to take over the jobs of the future. And when you go into a supermarket, a lot of supermarkets now, self-checkouts, that is obviously taking jobs. But the world does move on, the world creates jobs, and I thought it was really interesting what he had to say, and I definitely recommend checking out his podcast. I listened to the full maybe 2.5 hours, and I really enjoyed all of it. But yeah, so I think, business of the future, the world is going to change, and it's maybe just kind of being a bit more relaxed about actually, we do need to do things as a society to shape our thinking. But I saw a couple of things the other day that I could sort of sense how the world moves on and yet still creates jobs. So for example, like the music industry, music's been around for thousands of years, and if you think kind of only in recent years, we had the record, then we had the tape, then we had the CD, then we went digital. And each of those stages, there was always kind of a fear factor, certainly with the digital era, because it's a lot cheaper to create content, and then obviously you can push that out through the internet. But someone sent me a music playlist the other day on Spotify, and I've been on Spotify years ago, and I just went back on it to listen to this particular playlist. And it made me see how, their business model is that they charge people, you can have the free content, or they charge people a subscription a month. And the free content comes with advertising, which, okay, that's fair enough. I didn't want to pay for Spotify. I'll use the free version. I can live with adverts. But also little features like you can't skip songs, or you can only skip a couple of songs. So it makes you realise that, what companies have to do, because some of the music and the way the world changes, it's actually, they've got to keep up with how do we make money. And so just little things like that actually is quite a clever business model, because those people that then go, yeah, I like the free content, but it's really annoying me how I can't skip through this song, will hopefully get drawn in and I guess buy the Spotify subscription. So, and I think some of the stuff that we've seen as well, I mean, I was always a big fan of, well, not necessarily a big fan of IKEA, but I really like their business model about how if you think about when you go to IKEA shopping, they actually get you working as part of that shop. So you go around and you see everything on display, and then right at the end, you're unpacking shelves and taking it to the checkout. And obviously IKEA, I'm sure, I haven't been in for a few months, it'll be a bit like, the other supermarkets where they're giving you a scanner. They've probably already got one. So actually everything will become even quicker, and that process, that lean process will just, you'll walk into the shop, and you're part of the shop, you're part of the team, you're getting your own stuff, you're putting it in your car and off you go. So businesses, I guess the point is that business is going to change, jobs will change, and I guess as a parent, I kind of think, where do I put my energies into my children? What should you advise them to become? And I think, luckily, I've got a great wife who educates them. I like some of the sporty stuff. I really like playing football with my little boy at the moment. And actually, if society does change, they do talk about, people will have more time. And I know they've said that a lot. They have said that a lot over the sort of, centuries. I guess, it's always let's embrace technology because it'll give us more time, and it never kind of works out that way. But I do think, some of the kind of sporting events will never go away, and so actually pushing them into sports is not, for me, a bad thing. And probably computers and things like that. I think the digital technology era would be a good place to put him. So yeah, business is the future. Don't worry, people. The robots are coming. They are coming, but they won't take over our jobs. Okay, nutrition, subject that really interests me. I'm just going to have a little slurp of my coffee. I don't know if this will sound too much on the mic. Very sensitive mic. Okay, so nutrition. What is the perfect diet and how to lose weight? Now, I've been interested in nutrition for a good 20 odd years. And I first stumbled across it when my mum bought me a book that said about all the different health benefits of a particular food. So, brown rice was good for depression, broccoli anti-cancerous, da-da-da-da-da. And that was like 20 years ago, and I've always kept an interest in that, and I've always tried to eat well. And I've now started listening to podcasts about nutrition, and I've probably listened to over 200 hours of nutritional podcast information. I've stumbled across a few people that I really want to mention in a minute. But just in terms of what the perfect diet is, I mean, yes, you probably would guess the answer is there's not necessarily a perfect diet, but the evidence seems to be, from everything I've listened to, that, and someone summed it up really well on one of the Netflix documentaries that I can't remember the name, but it was mostly plants and don't eat too much. And the thing with plants as well is they've got so many medicinal qualities, and I think if you're not consuming plants in your diet, then it's a good start. And so I think it's mostly plants, and also the other thing in terms of nutrition I've listened to, and as I said, this wasn't a nutritional podcast. I will point you into places where you can listen to, and I do think it's important. I'll explain why in a minute. But fasting, there's lots of different people arguing about, well, is the keto diet better than this diet? What food should I eat? What a lot of them agree on is that fasting and not eating is actually really evidence-based, really good for the reversal of disease. And that's what really interests me about nutrition. It has the power to reverse chronic disease and prevent illness. So not only can it help you live longer and prevent you from having a future heart attack or stroke or whatever it might be, but it can actually reverse conditions. So the big thing at the moment is, not the big thing, it's been around for a while, but if you've got type 2 diabetes, you can actually reverse that. Now, according to some of the podcasts I'm listening to, a lot of the medical world is still actually, you've got type 2 diabetes, you can't do anything about it, and you need to be on a drug. And now they're kind of realising that actually we can reverse that and go back to how you were before you had diabetes and actually reverse the condition. So not necessarily just control it, but reverse it and eradicate it. And that's really powerful. I mean, when you think about it, I don't know if people have seen, but Theresa May is type 2 diabetic. And there's lots of other people out there. And a podcast I listen to, and I will give these shout outs now because I do think they're worth checking out. So Doctor's Kitchen, only just stumbled across Dr. Rupi, and he has lots of guests. One of them, I think, is one of his friends, Dr. Ayan, but they've got podcasts about type 2 diabetes, definitely worth listening to. Medicinal Chef with Dale Pinnock is definitely worth listening to. He, again, is a UK based. I listen to a lot of American podcasts, so I've said them before in previous a podcast that I've done. Dr. Mark Harmon and Dr. Prue Porritt from The Broken Brain, and then another one, Nutrition Facts. Now, the reason I will put all these links, I was going to say this, I will put links to stuff in this podcast just so you can check them out. But what I realised the other day myself is I'm driving to work, I'm listening to podcasts. When you listen to stuff, it inspires you. And so some of them are a little bit long, maybe an hour, and you might not always have time. Some of them are like 15 minutes. Medicinal Chefs are only 15 minutes. I think it's really good. you listen to it and then you think, yes, I want to improve my diet. So don't underestimate the power of listening to people talk about nutrition. Yes, you can look at Instagram and images and look at that recipe and you can read books, but don't underestimate the power of listening to people talk about nutrition. And I listened to Joe Wicks for the first time ever. I've known who Joe Wicks is for a while, but I've never really checked out his content. But he was on the Doctor's Kitchen recently, and Joe Wicks, he goes by the name of the Body Coach. A lot of people see success in his methods, just listening to a podcast just inspires you to act. Well, I think to keep on top of your diet and to make changes, and it really isn't easy. Someone asked me the question, what is your greatest weakness? When I have a hot drink, I have to have something sweet. It tends to be like something like dark chocolate, which is not unhealthy, but it can slip into kind of something sugary if I haven't got dark chocolate. Listen to podcasts on nutrition. I think it'll inspire you. But a couple of other things, again, I just wanted to mention, because I said, what we should do about it in the NHS. Excuse me. Again, I think social media can help connect a lot of people together on this topic area, because I'm doing a lot of research about it, but it's still very difficult to understand who's who. And I think one of the first things they could do is really get together a group of or a network. They need to build a network on people that understand nutrition. And I think you can do that through Twitter and social media. I think there's other ways that the NHS would need to do it, but I think just connecting with people on Twitter is not a bad starter as well. Getting the terminology right. A lot of people call it functional medicine, certainly in America. So if I look for stuff, functional medicine, we're now, I see in the UK, starting to call it lifestyle medicine. There's a lot of acronyms meaning the same thing. I think actually just having one acronym that connects people, or using similar terminology can really help. So I think they need to create a network, really understand what's out there, what it can actually do, and make some of this information transparent. And I know from the Doctor's Kitchen, Dr. Rupy, sorry Dr. Rupy, I know that isn't even your full name, but I know you do refer to yourself as Dr. Rupy. He's trying to educate GPs to really make them understand the field of nutrition, how can it reverse disease. So for me, it's not that shocking that GPs don't understand this. And I tested this myself when I work with GPs, and I asked them the question. They've got so many things to get their head around. So I'm never kind of critical of GPs. They do a fantastic job and they're really busy. But, it's nice when they're honest and sort of say, actually, we probably don't understand this area that much. So I think education for our health professionals, not just GPs, for health professionals on the field of nutrition. And for me, it needs to go more than just eat your 5 a day. That for me is it's too basic. And actually, they need to be looking at the power of some of these foods for specific circumstances as well. And yes, there's things like the low carb diet to reverse type 2 diabetes. Now again, I've done quite a bit of research into these subject areas and keto diet. I've tried keto diet myself, and yes, there were, but one of the podcasts I listened to did mention that actually some of these things, and I think this was Dale Pinnock from the Medicinal Chef. He said some of these diets, they're good for resetting metabolic pathways and just resetting your body system. So maybe if you have become unwell or you become overweight, some of these diets, they're quite good to reset that, but they're not a long-term strategy. And that resonated with me because when I'm doing the keto diet, and it was great, that's a high-fat diet, so I was eating 75-80% fat, and my body fat was well intact, and I was probably losing weight, and I was feeling lean. That was great. But then I was getting guilty about eating a banana or eating an apple, and I'm thinking that is fundamentally wrong. So yes, I think they're good and they serve as a strategy, but as a long-term goal, not for me. And so just a couple of things from my personal perspective that I think can really help people out. So I'd say eat mostly plants. So let me give you a tip. I am rushed because I've got a job like most people have, and I've got a young family, and I've got dogs, and I've got a big garden, I've got things coming out my ears. I'm not very organised anyway, the best of times, never mind when I've got all them things going on. Hummus and raw vegetables, I think, are a really good quick snack. So they're things that I just grab off the supermarket. Hummus, celery, cucumber, carrots. I don't even chop them and prep them. Dip them in, lovely. And actually, I'm trying to do more of that. More greens, spinach, lettuce. I know it sounds boring, but actually, for me, it's not all, I mean, you can really make them taste well. And again, this podcast isn't about giving you recipes. Go and check out other people that do it far better than me. But I guess the reason as well, like, it's not just about losing weight, why eating healthily is beneficial. Actually, for me, it's about the powers of those foods. And, you know, for example, I love having black currants in my smoothie in the morning. Black currants, really dark purple, aren't they? Black currants, really dark purple. And it's proven that dark purple foods help blood pressure. So when we've got massive problems up and down the country and all over the world with hypertension, people's blood pressure really high, dark fruits, dark coloured foods can help that, and there's science behind it. And I just wish more people knew about that, because yes, you know, drugs play an important part, but actually the power of foods can really help. Same with mushrooms, great for immunity. I tried to do some research the other day to send it to a link to a GP that I work with. Wasn't easy to find the information. I wanted to send him something that was really good, that kind of highlighted the evidence, and I was bombarded on the internet with loads of false articles that I thought, I'm not going to send him that. You know, they've done a study on 20 people. Well, 20 people ain't going to convince anyone. But the information is out there, and I think people like Dr. Rupi, Dr. Ayan, Dale Pinnock, they could play a massive role, and I'd love to see people networking together. So if anyone wants to do that, if anyone wants to get in touch with me to collaborate on that, I would be really interested. Okay, I always thought I would do these podcasts less than half an hour. In fact, I need to do them less than half an hour, because that's all I've got on Anchor FM, which is what I use for this podcasting platform. So we're at 27 minutes. So I am going to cut it a little bit short. I'm going to save death, dying and suicide and why we need to think differently until the next episode. And I'm going to save fighting, knife crime and martial arts and how we can ensure our kids are safe to the next episode. So I hope you enjoyed it. I was going to say I don't even care if you didn't. You know, as I said, for me, this was just my way of trying to test out how to do a podcast. Very difficult talking to yourself. Very difficult to be scripted and authentic at the same time. Don't have a lot of time, so again, I'm just this morning, I'm off rushing, got to take the kids to football, all them kind of things. So it's very difficult to do something like this. You need to be really well planned for it to be smooth. But I'm sure we'll improve over the weeks and months. Thank you for joining me. Remember, you can subscribe to the channel, and if I've got this right now, you can only click the subscribe button at the end of the video, because as this video has come to the end, somewhere around here, one would hope, is a subscribe to this YouTube channel. But if you're listening to this on a podcast player, again, please subscribe. I said, I'm not wanting thousands of followers. I don't even care if I have no followers. I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm just doing it to get some of my thinking out. I'm just trying to wonder, just before we fully wrap up, did I give you any ideas for the future? And I don't think I did, actually, did I? And I promised you I'd give you some ideas, and I've got some others. I'm just going to give you one really quickly. One of the things I said on nutrition, what I think is really important, what I'd love to see do. You go into a supermarket, you're bombarded with loads of products. They are everywhere. This one's healthy, that one's healthy, all the unhealthy stuff. I'd love to see an online platform that really did just focus on, you know, proper healthy products. And what I mean by products is things that have been kind of processed. Now, some people argue that processed isn't right, but I do believe that there's healthy processed foods out there. So I'd love to see that. So I'd love to see something that brought together some of them products that are out on the market, because the thing is, there are so many, and so many are rubbish. Like, if you look at the protein was a big thing, you know, protein's really good, you need more protein in your diet. So you go into a garage now, and that, not even a supermarket, but garages, all over their shelves, products, protein, and you look at the ingredient list, and they're just full of rubbish. So there are some great products out there that I think are good for snacky sort of stuff. Obviously, things like, you know, fruit and veg really should be buying local down at store. But I think there's a place for a really good online platform that brings together some of the best products that actually can have a beneficial impact on health and well-being. And some of them, because they don't need to be fresh, equally as well. You know, your nuts and seeds. You know, people need to be eating nuts and seeds. Really good fats in there. And some of these products, I think, with nuts and seeds, are in some of the processed products. So I think there's a lot of stuff out there, and I would love to see someone bring it all together in some sort of online platform. I would love to be part of that. So if you're interested, get in touch. Right, I do need to go. So hopefully you've enjoyed this first episode of P4Di, and I hope to speak to you soon.